Today in grammar, we're going to talk about words that compare. We're going to start with adjectives that compare, and then we're going to move into adverbs that compare. So let's look at this, okay? This projectable. Adjectives ending in ER compare two nouns, okay? Adjectives ending in EST compare more than two nouns, okay? So three or more. For adjectives with two or more syllables that end in Y, we replace the Y, okay, with an I. And then we add ER or EST. For adjectives with three or more syllables, we add more, right here, more to compare two nouns, and add most to compare three. Okay? The cleanup, here's an example. The cleanup happened on the what day of the week? We need to use the correct form of breezy. So to choose the correct form, we need to think about how many does the adjective compare, and does it have more than two syllables? And lastly, does it end in Y? So how many nouns does the adjective compare? Well, breezy is comparing more than 2 days. It happened on the something day of the week. It also has two syllables and ends in the word Y. So the correct form is breeziest. The cleanup happened on the breeziest day of the week. Let's look at the examples on this projectable and walk through them. So we need to think about what the correct form of the adjective in parentheses is, and then whether it's two or more. Okay, then whether it's two or more than two in terms of how many adjectives it compares, okay? So, or how many nouns the adjective compares. So, Mel was the early volunteer to arrive, okay? Is this comparing two or more than two? Remember, more than two, we add est. And this is Mel being compared to the other volunteers. There's more than two. Okay? So then, does it have more than two syllables? Early. It does not have more than two syllables. Does it end in Y? Sure does. Mel was the earliest volunteer to arrive. Earliest would be the correct form of the adjective in parentheses. Let's do the next one. The number of volunteers this year was greater than the number of volunteers last year. Here, are we comparing two or more than two? Just two, right? This year and last year. So then we know right away we're going to use ER. All right? Does it have more than two syllables, our word? It does not. It does not end in Y either. So we know we just need to add ER. So the number of volunteers this year was greater than the number of volunteers last year. You can pause the video and talk about 3 and 4 and decide which form of the adjective in parentheses is correct, and then I will slide it to the projectable that has the correct answers. All right, did you get them? Some volunteer work is interesting than other volunteer work. This is again two nouns. More interesting is the way that we are going to compare this one. And then these volunteers were the most delightful group ever. It's comparing more than two nouns because there are more than two volunteers. All right. Now, before I send you to your reader's notebook to practice, let's look at words that compare, but this time adverbs instead of adjectives. adverbs describe verbs, okay? Adjectives describe nouns. So here we're switching to verbs. Adverbs ending in ER, all right, compare to. And adverbs ending in the EST, compare 3 or more. For adverbs that end in LY, you're going to add more before the adverb to compare to, and most before the adverb to compare 3 or more. So here's our example. Stephen cleaned than Derek. So to choose the correct form of the adverb, I need to ask the thinking questions here. How many does the adverb compare, and does it end in ly? So the sentence compares Stephen and Derek, okay, and how the two boys cleaned. And because the correct form of the word speedily is what we're using for, it does end in ly. So then I have to use the word, because it compares to, I have to use the word more in front of speedily. So the correct form to show how Stephen cleaned compared to how Derek cleaned is more speedily. So Stephen cleaned more speedily than Derek. All right? So let's go ahead and think about the correct form of the adjective in, it's just supposed to be adverbs. And then write 2 or 3 or more to explain the one that we wrote. Okay, so Stephanie felt seriously than Carl about collecting trash from the stream. So how many adverbs are we comparing? We're just comparing 2, how Stephanie felt and then how Carl felt. So we are comparing 2. Our word does end in ly, so we need to add more in front of it. Stephanie felt more seriously than Carl about collecting trash from the stream. Does that sound right? Number 2. Stephanie's group worked quickly than Carl's group. Again, how many adverbs are we comparing? We're comparing Stephanie's group work to Carl's group work. So we're comparing 2. Does our word end in ly? It most certainly does. So we need to add more. Stephanie's group worked more quickly than Carl's group. Pause the video and work through 3 and 4 with your learning adult, and I will show you the slide in a second. All right, did you get it? The last 2 were 3 or more, so we had to add most cautiously because cautiously ended in ly. Loud, on the other hand, did not, even though they were comparing 3 or more, so we just needed to add the suffix est to the end of loud. Okay, so now it's your turn to practice. So these reader's notebook pages that you're going to practice adjectives and adverbs that compare are set up very similar to the projectables that I was showing you while we were walking through the examples. They have all the information you need about adjectives that compare, has your thinking question, and you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to write the correct form of the adjective in parentheses, but then don't forget to write 2 or 3 or more to explain the form that you wrote. Okay, so this backpack is light than that one. Okay, we are comparing 2 backpacks, right? This one and that one. And so when we're comparing 2, if our word does not end in y, we add er. So lighter is our word, and it's 2, okay, because we're only comparing 2. So you're going to go through the rest of this page, and then you're going to do 146 and 147. Here's the adverbs that compare. Again, same information that we worked with on the projectable. Your thinking question is here. You're going to write the correct form of the adverb, and then write 2 or 3 or more to explain the form you wrote. So let's do the first one. Will waited patiently than Kyle for the storm to pass. All right, we are comparing how Will waited to how Kyle waited. So we're comparing 2. Our word does end in ly. So we're going to add more in front of the word. More patiently, and then you need to note that it is to, because we're comparing two adverbs, okay? Then you're going to work through the rest on your own.